Your career is not this linear, clear, step-by-step ladder sort of path like I really thought it was going to be. You know, she said, your career is definitely more like a jungle gym.
Welcome to Think Inside the Box. This is our series where we're shining a light on female entrepreneurs. So today with me is Shannon 𝗙𝗶𝗍, and she works for Booz Allen Hamilton. She's a 2012 graduate of Grove City College and Communication Studies. So shout out to my program. So wanted to spend some time initially allowing Shannon to introduce herself and a little bit about her career journey. So Shannon, could you share a little bit about that with us?
Yes, I started my career journey working at an apartment complex. I was a property manager for a while. Really, to start, it was anything that I could do to get some office level experience so I can put something on my resume. And about 2 years of that, I quickly was able to start to get my foot into what I found out was the government contracting world. So where my husband was born and raised, it was near the Patuxent River Naval Air Station. So, which is a naval air station really far south, deep into Maryland at the bottom of the peninsula. No, not the Eastern Shore. Yes, there is more land south of Waldorf in Maryland. We're down here. And so starting in down that path, I had to kind of figure out who I was in this new world, kind of where did my talents fit in all of this. And so my husband was the one originally who said that I should get into consulting in the first place. He thought I'd be really good at it. And so I kind of used my communications background to leverage into technical writing is where I kind of started very quickly. Quickly also recognized that that wasn't really the best fit for me. My specific tasking required me to be behind a computer screen 80% of the time, not a lot of person-to-person interaction, and I didn't like that very much. I'm clearly an extrovert. So quickly I kind of just started getting my hands into anything I possibly could to learn and kind of figure out, and eventually that led to project management, which is where I am now. So, and I've been in project management for about the last 3 years.
That's great. And I know we've talked about this before, and as you kind of share your own journey, I'm definitely thinking about a very key piece of advice that you received. So could you share about the notion of a jungle gym? So you kind of shared about how you've gone from rung to rung, and maybe ways that are, for some people, kind of looking at, you know, disparate things, but you've seen the connection. So can you share a little bit about who shared that piece of advice with you and how that's really shaped you in your career journey?
Yes. So very early on in starting at my government consulting firm, I started getting really close with my senior associate, kind of senior leader, and we started having regular mentoring conversations. She was kind of the one who kind of offered that to me to be my mentor. And through those conversations, as I was kind of discovering, you know, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What is that going to look like? And I built this gigantic Excel spreadsheet of just all the things I was working on and what I felt like I was good at and where I saw myself in 10 years. And I kind of just like laid it all out for her and said, you know, what do you think? What could I possibly do? And she was the one who said, okay, calm down. You know, your career is not this linear, clear, step-by-step ladder sort of path like I really thought it was going to be. You know, she said, your career is definitely more like a jungle gym. You're going to have to jump around between different experiences before you find kind of your niche opportunity and where you fit. And then once you find that, she said, you know, you'll kind of feel it and you'll be able to build on that, but it's going to take some time to kind of figure that out. So very thankful for that advice from her. It's made a big difference in my career.
Yeah. And it really helps in lots of ways that are tangible for you, but also as you think about long-term about how to view it, I think mindset is so key. And so when you think about the way in which that provides flexibility to that, the ability to pivot, the ability to be resilient, to bounce back, also too, much more inclusive vision of what career development could be, that you don't have to be the only isolated person on that rung, you know, sidestepping someone else, but that it brings other people along. So that's what I really love about that metaphor and that imagery, you know.
And I think too, a part of that for me was where I'm located, it is very heavily technical. So even with, I have an MBA now this semester, I'm about to graduate at the end of the semester. Even with that business experience, my communications background, very much a lot of project management experience as well, I recognize that the area is very technically inclined, technically focused. And so the more that I spent time focusing on this business aspect, it wasn't for naught. I mean, I'm using it, but I quickly have realized in the last few years, I need to also be flexible enough to switch into a more technical realm. And so I'm about to start, once this master's is over, my next one in systems engineering. Working towards that master's in systems engineering is going to be my big key, I think, pivot change, using your terminology there, and applying what I've built on so far in my career and being able to apply that in order to excel even further and not kind of get myself in a situation where I'm going to feel stuck or I've hit, I hate to say, you know, that missing rung on the ladder where you can't get past it. I feel like that's where I was leading up to this point, and now this next step and really kind of demonstrating to my predominantly male peers that I'm absolutely capable of being equally as technical as they are. And now I'm going to have the degree to prove it, so that I can kind of be on the same playing field and work my way up with them.
Yeah. And I think that's such critical advice. And also too, as you think about that, here's a communications major, now systems engineer, you know, so I think I love that and embrace that as someone who's known you as a student. And, you know, like you said, that it's all about that mindset and really saying that those technical hard skills are not just for certain types of people, you know, but leaning
Absolutely
into that
not.
and saying, like, moving beyond that. So what advice would you have for people that maybe are in those non-traditional majors and, you know, you've opened the door, you know, for so many different opportunities within that? So much of that really relates to this notion of being an entrepreneur, like leading innovation and change and bringing along people on side for that. So what advice would you have for people who are particularly young women? Like you said, you are in a male dominated field. And so as you think about women who are looking for something within corporate environments, government environments, typically places that we say, oh, that's not where we go if we want to lead innovation and change, you have really shown otherwise. So I'd love to hear your advice about particularly what can women learn from you who are seeking to go into those male dominated fields and lead innovation and change.
Yeah, I think the biggest term, and you've already used it, is flexibility and resourcefulness, and really recognizing that just because you, maybe especially when you're younger, you know, there are so many people who tell you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so you kind of start to make choices that inevitably lead you to this ultimate kind of career path. But that's not, just because you're, you know, 22 and graduating from college doesn't mean that that's it. You know, you graduated, you have a career, and now, you know, you have a history background. All you can do is be a history professor or a teacher over time, and that's it, you know, with your life. And you've got to be able to kind of take every opportunity, whether you like it or whether you don't. I think partially because you have to learn whether you truly do like something or don't like something. And for me, as an example with systems engineering, it runs so closely to project management. And yes, it is a lot more technical, but if I'm able to keep up with all of the same levels of information in order to work towards a PMP certification, then I'm equally as capable of working towards all of that memorization of data and information in order to get to an 𝗀𝗃𝗃 certification. You know, there's no limitation. I personally, you know, have been placed in a box for so long, having been told, you know, you're too pretty for math. And you know, my mom was really a really big proponent, and I love her. Not that she hasn't encouraged me now in my career path, but especially when I was younger, you know, I'm a great public speaker, so that's what I should just do with my life. And I started to limit myself in thinking what that could look like. You know, I must be a communications major. I must, you know, do something in which I'm working with a ministry or something in order to kind of have an opportunity to speak to others. And that's not the case. And you know, now I'm using my platforms in technology in order to share with more people, in order to communicate and use all of that. So I think you have to just be flexible with your mindset, be flexible with your opportunities, and kind of just take it as you go, and then figure out, okay, I can do this. You know, so now what does that look like for me, and where do I fit in that? Mm-hmm. On the flip side, though, I am a big proponent of also doing what makes you happy. You know, don't just jump in, you know, here's an opportunity to be technical and be a lead in technical work if you really hate it. You know, don't do that. Please don't take that advice by saying, you know, just because I'm a woman, I need to do this because, you know, do it for all the other girls. If you really love it, do it. But if you don't, also kind of find that happy balance between what makes you happy as an individual and what you're good at too, you know.
I think it's beautiful and very well said. And makes me think too about so much of your story as well really speaks to the importance of stretch assignments. And so I feel like at critical stages in your career, like you mentioned with the case of your manager earlier about having that conversation or saying that you desire more, here's how you could be useful, valuable. I know that asking for what we want and being our own self-advocates can be very challenging particularly for young women. So I'm curious about insights that you have into that, advice you would have for women, maybe share an example of where you were able to successfully negotiate, you know, within that. So what advice would you have on that front?
Yeah, so additionally, another mentor or really champion that I have had recently in the last few years has been a senior male in my firm. You know, he was the one I think who early on, granted, I'm extroverted and I'm kind of loud. So I was very regularly sharing with people what I wanted to do. I kind of built up this, okay, I'm going to get my MBA, then I'm going to get this second master's, I'm going to do this stuff, and I'm going to be a project manager, systems engineering tasking. And I kind of built up this whole persona. And then I realized no one knew that that existed. So I needed to share that with people. And so I started doing that. And this male colleague came over and was like, you know, I realized we've been working you under your potential for so long. You know, we've been putting you in positions because we know you're going to rock it. And so there you were in that position. But very quickly, I was growing out of those roles. I was getting really bored and I was kind of, you know, monotonous, doing the same kind of monthly reporting. And I finally said, okay, I really need something else to keep me challenged. He agreed. And so he started throwing my name out there, the kind of behind the closed doors conversations where I'm not included, but there he was saying, you know, Shannon's really great at this. Shannon would be really awesome at this. I really think you should consider Shannon for this opportunity. And that was definitely pivotal for me so far in my career, is having that person throw my name out there when I couldn't for myself and kind of vouch for me to say, let's start working you, you know, above your potential. Let's start really challenging you so that you can actually work up to that and keep growing. So yeah, that was kind of the big key thing for me.
And it's wonderful, that balance between, like you said, some managers can serve in more of that mentoring capacity, but that example that you just shared is all about the importance of sponsorship. So who's going to be your person, like you said, behind those closed doors, sitting at the table when there's decisions are being made and saying, have you thought about Shannon? And I think that's really important when we think about the building almost like a personal board of directors, you know, as you think about your career development, like those mentors play a role, but moving forward to also pinpoint, identify, and manage relationships with sponsors. I think that's really important as well. So as you think about that relationship, I think that male ally is also really key in your story. So advice that you would have about things that you've learned from him, maybe working with yourself and other women, or what can managers do? I'm wondering, that's sort of my question as I think about, he's been such a good role model for you in that front. As you think about other managers that could help play a part in other women's lives in particular, what advice would you have for managers?
As a manager, my best advice would be open and also flexible to hearing feedback from the women that you work with. In particular, this particular champion sponsor that I had, in his quest to continue getting the opportunities, I had worked on a proposal and we had won this proposal, and now we had an opportunity to go in and meet with the lead of this contract, the really key client. And in order to get my foot in the door, because I wasn't necessarily working on that contract, was for me to take meeting minutes at that initial kind of program management review. And the first time it was great. It got me an opportunity to have FaceTime with the client. It got me an opportunity to kind of put my name out there. You know, the champion / sponsor, he was really great. He even said she was our coordinator for this effort. You know, we couldn't have done it without her. So he really put my name out there, which was wonderful. But then we kind of continued these meetings where I was still just taking meeting minutes. And I recognized that the client was recognizing me as the girl who takes meeting minutes. So now, on the flip side, my reputation went from being a really awesome contributor to a business development effort to being the meeting minutes girl and kind of the helper in the room. And so at one point, I kind of just said to my champion or sponsor, hey, I really appreciate the opportunity that you've given me, but on the flip side, here's kind of what's happening from my perspective. And you know, I would hate to eventually be one of those systems engineering project managers on one of his tasks and him still have this viewpoint of me as being, oh, can you take meeting minutes for this meeting? So I did say that to him, and very luckily he quickly apologized and said he had no idea that was kind of the persona he was sharing, and that he would absolutely, you know, if I wanted to come back and meet this client, he'd happily help me do that. But if I didn't want to take meeting minutes, he understood, and he would find somebody else, and he would find other ways to support me. So be willing to hear that feedback, even if it's kind of brutally honest, and recognize it's not necessarily something that you intentionally did. Obviously his intentions were very good, but you still have that, you know, to use that kind of unconscious bias terminology, it does exist and you don't realize it does. And so when someone can point it out to you and help you recognize it, just be flexible with hearing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great advice. And it makes me wonder too about so much what you're sharing is the importance of leading change and innovation, both from top down to bottom up, and how we can work together to really foster inclusive environments. And so I'm thinking too about what advice would you have as you think about, more generally speaking, of leading change efforts? So do you have an example that comes to mind as you think about your own career and ways in which you've been able to help foster that? What can you share more about that example? And then also what insights you gleaned as a result of that?
Yeah, so as far as inclusivity and helping others kind of come along with me in this path, I have been mentoring other women since I started at my consulting firm, and have made it a priority to really create extra time in my schedule whenever they need it to kind of walk them through not only just kind of basic career experiences. Some of them are very young, and so they're just trying to figure out, you know, what do I do with a full-time job sort of conversation. But also I have a number of women who I've just been blunt honest with, the same blunt honesty that I've received from a lot of my male colleagues about how to succeed in this world. I'm sharing with them, and I always usually call it the like unspoken rules of the business. You know, the things that aren't written down that you don't know you need to do, but if you aren't doing them, then you aren't going to get opportunities. So I usually try to share those things and keep things really open. Another conversation I've had actually a lot with people is salary conversations. I've actually been pretty open about that. I know it's pretty taboo, but in order to help other women feel like they're getting paid what they're worth in the roles that they're in, I want people to understand that I've been through similar struggles with them. You know, I came in making a really low salary, being in a more supporting role, to having to champion for myself in order to, you know, qualify myself to say, hey, I'm working just as hard as this person or as hard as this person, and I deserve this particular amount as well. And then kind of encouraging others to do the same thing so that we can get to a point where everybody has a little bit more of an equal pay opportunity. So.
Yeah, that's great. So any concluding pieces of advice, you know, as you think about resources that have been really beneficial for you, maybe books, maybe podcasts, any resources you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so my best advice is to take in all of the resources, do all of and it can be overwhelming and kind of figure out what you can and can't take into your schedule. But for me personally, so I joined Women in Defense. I'm the president of our local Chesapeake Bay chapter. That has expanded my network and exponentially in the local area. It is a localized chapter, while still being very highly involved in the overall defense industry. So that was really key for me. Additionally, I recently downloaded Audible, and I listen to books every month as I'm driving. I have about a 30-minute commute to where I work. And I listen to all kinds of really inspiring leadership books, or, you know, kind of books aimed at women in their careers to help inspire me. So when I go into the office, even if I only listen to a few minutes, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like let me get in there and really do this thing. Additionally, I cleared out my feed on my Instagram and on my LinkedIn to kind of really hone in on following people who are giving positive feedback, whether that's from a health perspective, even, you know, reminders to drink water and to exercise regularly and eat healthy, as well as a lot of kind of you can do it sort of things, positivity, so that even if it's inevitable, you're going to kind of pick up your phone and be like, oh yeah, let me just real quick in the middle of the workday. If the first thing that's popping up is something inspiring, then I'm going to feel better and be able to move through my day more. So kind of all of the resources are really key to helping you stay motivated and on task.
Yeah, that holistic approach is so key to, like you said, not just be thinking about the practicalities of work all the time, but thinking about life, you know, and embedding that into the practices of mindset and well-being. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for your time today, Shannon.
Anytime.